Arif's story begins on a morning that seemed ordinary, yet turned into the most eye-opening day of his life. Arif was the kind of man who never stopped running. Running for promotions, running for wealth, running for approval. His life looked perfect from the outside. He had a well-paying job, a car, and a stylish apartment. But deep inside, his heart was restless. He would often scroll through social media, comparing his life with his friends. Someone was traveling to Europe. Someone just bought a new house. Someone else had announced their engagement. And every time, Arif's chest tightened with a painful thought: why am I always behind? That morning, everything seemed to be against him. He was already late for work, his phone kept buzzing with stressful emails, and worst of all, his car suddenly broke down right in the middle of a crowded road. The sound of honking horns filled the air as drivers shouted angrily. Frustration burned inside him like fire. He slammed his hands on the steering wheel and muttered, "Why does this always happen to me?" Feeling helpless, he stepped out of the car, waiting for a mechanic to arrive. His eyes scanned the busy street, and that's when he noticed something strange. At the corner, on an old wooden bench, sat an elderly man. His clothes were faded and torn, his shoes were worn out, and all he had was a simple walking stick by his side. Yet, his face was lit with a smile so warm, so peaceful, it was almost out of place in the chaos of the city. Arif couldn't understand it. How could this man, who clearly had nothing, look happier than me? Driven by a mix of curiosity and irritation, Arif walked up to him and asked sharply, "Excuse me, why are you smiling? Don't you have problems in life?" The old man looked at him with gentle eyes and chuckled softly. His voice was calm, almost soothing as he replied, "Son, of course I have problems. Everyone does. But I have something greater than my problems. I have gratitude. Every morning I wake up, I say, thank you, for another chance to live. Every step I take, I am grateful these legs still carry me. Every breath I breathe, I see it as a gift. And when you see life as a gift, there is always a reason to smile." For the first time in years, Arif fell silent. Those words didn't just enter his ears, they pierced straight into his heart. Standing there, in the middle of a noisy street, with cars honking and people rushing past, Arif realized something shocking: he had been chasing happiness in all the wrong places. All his life, he thought joy was hidden in success, wealth, or recognition. Yet here sat a poor man with almost nothing, radiating a peace and happiness Arif had never known. Arif lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind wandered back to his daily routine, waking up already worried, rushing to work, battling traffic, endless deadlines, and coming home too tired to feel joy. He realized he had lived most of his life without ever pausing to be thankful. But could gratitude really change anything? He wasn't sure. Still, something inside him whispered, try it. He got up, took out a notebook from his drawer, and wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. 1. His parents, who still checked on him daily. 2. His health, which allowed him to work hard. 3. The roof over his head, protecting him from the world outside. It felt awkward, even childish. He laughed to himself, this is silly. How can writing 3 lines make me happy? But deep down, a spark had been lit. The next morning, when he held his cup of tea, he remembered the old man's smile. Instead of gulping it down mindlessly, he paused, inhaled the steam, took a sip, and whispered, thank you. The tea tasted different, richer, warmer, almost like a comfort he had been missing. For years. On his way to work, the traffic was still terrible, horns still blared, but this time, instead of muttering curses, he looked around. He noticed the shade of trees lining the street, the songs of birds perched on wires, and even a little child waving from the window of a passing bus. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel stuck, he felt alive. But transformation is never easy. Old habits don't disappear overnight. Some evenings, he would still catch himself scrolling through social media, comparing his life with others. Seeing pictures of friends traveling, marrying, or buying new houses would stab him with jealousy. His chest would tighten, and he would mutter, I'm still behind. But then, he would remember the old man's words, when you see life as a gift, there is always a reason to smile. He would close his eyes, breathe deeply, and whisper 3 things he was thankful for. Slowly, the knot in his chest would loosen. Gratitude became his anchor, something he held on to when negative waves tried to pull him under. Weeks later, something remarkable happened. A close friend called him late at night, crying. She had just lost her job and felt like her whole world was collapsing. Normally, Arif would have given the same old advice, "Don't worry, things will get better." But this time, he shared something new. He told her, "Each night, before you sleep, write down just 3 things you're grateful for. It won't solve everything instantly, but it will give you strength." She listened, though unsure. But a few weeks later, she called back, her voice steadier, her tone lighter. She said, "Arif, your advice worked. I can't explain how, but I finally sleep in peace. I feel hope again." At that moment, Arif realized gratitude wasn't just healing him. It was touching others too. And slowly, he began to see, a thankful heart doesn't just change your life, it spreads light into the lives around you. Months passed, and Arif's life began to shift, slowly at first, then more deeply than he ever imagined. Outwardly, nothing about his world had changed. He still worked at the same office, drove the same car, and lived in the same modest apartment. His problems hadn't magically disappeared. Deadlines still piled up, bills still arrived, stress still knocked on his door. But inside, everything was different. Each morning, before touching his phone, Arif would sit quietly, close his eyes, and whisper, "Thank you." Sometimes it was for the rising sun painting the sky with colors. Sometimes for the sound of his mother's voice calling to check on him. Sometimes just for the fact that his heart was still beating. These moments didn't take away his challenges, but they gave him a strength he had never known before. The restless emptiness that once kept him awake at night had faded. In its place was a calmness, a peace that carried him through the chaos of daily life. Arif also began noticing something beautiful. Gratitude made him kinder. When he bought bread from the bakery, he smiled at the shopkeeper and said, "Thank you for your hard work." When he got on a bus, he made sure to thank the driver. When he passed a homeless man on the street, he offered a meal instead of looking away. Small gestures, but they carried great meaning, not only for others, but for him too. With every act of gratitude, his heart grew lighter. One evening, while walking home after a long day, Arif's eyes caught a familiar figure on the corner of the street. There, on the same old wooden bench, sat the man who had changed his life, the elderly man with the walking stick. His clothes were still worn, his hands still fragile, but his smile was just as radiant as before. Arif's heart leapt. He hurried over, sat beside him, and said with emotion, "Sir, you may not remember me. Months ago, my car broke down near this road, and you told me something I'll never forget. You said gratitude makes life a gift. Those words changed me. I live differently now, and I wanted to thank you." The old man looked at him, eyes shining with quiet wisdom. He nodded slowly and replied, "Gratitude, my boy, is like sunlight. It doesn't remove the darkness from the world, but it gives you the light to walk through it. I'm glad you chose to walk in the light." Arif felt tears in his eyes. He realized that gratitude wasn't just a practice anymore, it had become his mindset, his way of life. That night, as he lay in bed, Arif whispered once more, "Thank you." And this time, it wasn't just words, it was the heartbeat of his soul. Because the power of a thankful heart is this: it doesn't erase your struggles, but it transforms how you carry them. It doesn't guarantee a perfect life, but it brings peace to the one you already have. So remember Arif's story. Whenever life feels heavy, whenever you feel lost or restless, pause, take a deep breath, and whisper those 2 simple words, "Thank you."